Welcome to my Venus Pentagram Point workshop, which I just realized has completely the wrong title on my slide. There we go. That's better. I will share my screen so you can see my slideshow. Hey, got a couple of intentions for today. We're going to try to explore the link between the mythology of Inanna and this cycle of Venus. See how Venus cycles support our growth and evolution. And understand your unique Venus signature, because there's so much depth to the planets in our birth chart, and we often look at them as just being in signs and houses, and actually there's more to it than that. Hey Robin, welcome. So if anyone wants to put in the chat what they know about their Venus placement already, like the sign and the house that it's in, if you know your chart, or if you know anything else about it. So I have a retrograde Venus, and we're going to talk about what it means to have a morning or evening star Venus as well. So if you would like to share any of that in the chat, feel free. I'm going to tell you the story of Inanna to begin, because I think this is the context with which we can look at the whole Venus cycle. So I'm going to tell you the story of the descent of Inanna. She is a Sumerian goddess, an ancient goddess. She's referred to as the morning star and the evening star. So we can tell that she relates really strongly to Venus, because that's how we see Venus in the sky. She is, in lots of ancient cultures, she was considered as equal to the sun and the moon, because when she's visible, she's the brightest star in the sky. You can really see why she's linked to beauty, because she's really beautiful when you look at her. And so Inanna is the queen of heaven and earth. She is this beautiful goddess of light and beauty and fertility and gorgeousness. And she has these 7 powers that have been given to her by her grandfather Enki. And one day she turns her ear to the great below, and she hears a cry of grief from her sister, Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal is the goddess of the great below, and she is mourning because her husband has died. And she knows grief because she's the queen of the underworld. So she is always surrounded by death and dust and bones and decay. And that is her life. That is her, what she has dominion over. And so we see these 2 goddesses as almost the complete opposite of each other. One of them has been given gifts and powers and is the queen of heaven, and the other has been given dust and bones and decay, and they have both ruled over these areas. And as Inanna hears this cry of grief, she's moved with compassion, and she says, I must go to the great below and witness the funeral rites of my sister's husband and be there for her. And so she starts this journey to go to the great below. And she knows that there's a chance that she might never return. It's a very dangerous journey. And there are 7 gates to get there. And as she approaches the first gate, the gatekeeper sees her coming, and he goes to Ereshkigal and he says, Inanna is coming to the gate, and she wants to come to witness the funeral rites of your husband. And Ereshkigal feels she feels really angry about this, that this goddess of light would come into her space and shine her light and be all of her beautifulness. There's real pain and jealousy there. And she doesn't want to be dealing with that in her grief. And so she says to her gatekeeper, you can let Inanna through, but at each gate, I want you to remove one of her powers, one of her me. And I want her to only enter the great below when she is naked, when she is powerless, and when she is bowed low. And so that's the journey that Inanna goes on. And as she gets to each gate, one of her powers, one of her me, which is represented by an item of clothing, is taken from her. So at the first gate, she's allowed through, but her Shigura crown is taken from her. She goes to the gatekeeper, why are you doing this? Why are you taking that from me? And the gatekeeper says, don't question the ways of the underworld. The ways of the underworld are perfect. And then she goes to the next gate, and her lapis beads are taken from around her neck. And these each relate to a chakra. And so her crown is her crown chakra. And so this relates to her divine connection. And then her lapis beads relate to her third eye, so her sight. And then her double-stranded necklace at the third gate is her throat chakra, and this relates to her voice. Then her breastplate is removed, and each time she asks, why are you doing this? And the gatekeeper says, do not question the ways of the underworld. The ways of the underworld are perfect. And these are all removed from her golden bracelet of her power of will, from her solar plexus, her lapis measuring rod and line, her creative potential from her sacral chakra, and her royal robe, her security, the thing that covers her that relates to her root chakra, is finally taken away. And she enters the underworld naked and bowed low. And as she enters the underworld, the fates are there, and they instantly have a meeting when they see her and judge her as guilty and sentence her to death, almost out of nowhere the moment that she arrives. And she is sentenced to death by Arishka girl. The Arishka girl stabs her, and she is hung on a meat hook on the wall as a rotting corpse. And this feels like just the most brutal and unexpected end to a story that begins with compassion. But it is a metaphor for what it is like to beat your own shadow and to do that journey yourself into allowing yourself to be stripped bare so that you can face the darkest parts of you with compassion, even though it's not going to be easy. That's the journey that she took, but it's not the end of the journey, not the end of the whole story. She has left a message for her maid, Ninshkabar, to, if she doesn't return in 3 days, to make sure that she goes for help to Inanna's fathers. And so first Ninshkabar goes to her grandfather on her father's side and says that Inanna has gone to the underworld and she hasn't returned and she needs help. And can they help her? And he says, no, Inanna has always been desperate for power. She's looking for the power from the underworld. It's selfish. It's reckless. She knew she wasn't coming back. Just, she made her bed, let her lie in it. And Ninshkabar is sad, but she continues to Inanna's father, to his son. And she goes to him and she says, can you help Inanna? She has traveled to the underworld. And he says, he says the same thing as his father. She did this to herself. This was her choice. She knew what she was doing. And so now she won't return. And then Ninshkabar goes to her grandfather on her mother's side. And Enki is the father who gave her the 7 me. And he himself has journeyed to the underworld, and he feels great compassion for Inanna. He's really troubled to hear what has happened to her, and he has a plan to rescue her. And so this is the weird bit. He scrapes some dirt from under his fingernails, and out of this dirt, he creates two creatures and disguises them as flies, small enough that they'll be able to sneak through the gaps in the gates all the way to the great below. And so these two flies journey down to the great below, down to Inanna's corpse, and they see Ereshkigal. And when they arrive there, they see Ereshkigal in the pains of labor. But she is not fertile. She is a goddess of death. And so this is a labor where she is not going to have a baby at the end of it. But she still feels all of the pain. I did not make a slide for that one. And as they see her, she's wailing in pain, and she goes, "Oh, my insides, oh, my outsides. I'm in so much pain." And these flies, they've been told by Father Enki that when they see her, they are to repeat back what she is saying. And so they say back to her, "Oh, your insides, oh, your outsides, we see your pain." And she says, "Oh, my back, oh, my belly." And they repeat back, "Oh, your back, oh, your belly." And as she continues to labor and they continue to be with her, witnessing, listening to her pain, she feels comforted, and there is healing to this witnessing of her in her pain. And so she says to them, Thank you for being with me. Who are you, and what can I give you in return?" And the flies say to her, "We want that corpse hanging on your wall." And she says, "But that's the corpse of Inanna. She's been sentenced to death, and so now she is a corpse." And the flies go, "No, we really want her. That's what we want." And so she gives them the corpse of Inanna hanging on a meat hook. And they sprinkle on her the food of life and the water of life, and she is reborn. And when she's reborn, there is a question about what she can do, because she can't leave the underworld without there being someone to take her place. But she is alive now, so she can choose someone to take her place. And so now that she is reborn, she is still Inanna, but there is a new depth to her. She is Inanna who has traveled to the underworld, who has faced death and has been reborn. And she is now followed by demons who are looking for someone to replace her. And she begins her journey of ascent. And through this journey of ascent, we're not just reclaiming each of those 7 powers. There's an integration that happens in this side of the story where she has faced her shadows, and she has a deep power within her now. So as she reclaims these powers, she's not reclaiming them from a place of them giving something to her. She is integrating that with her knowledge of the underworld. And so we follow her journey of ascent again through the 7 gates. I don't feel like we need a break. We're like less than 20 minutes in. So I wanted to look at whether your Venus in your chart. Oh, let's take a moment to process the Inanna thing. Sorry, I'm racing ahead. So this journey of Inanna is is really related to the Venus cycle because she has these two key phases. The phase of descent and the phase of ascent, the phase of morning star and the phase of evening star. And depending on whether you have a morning star or an evening star in your chart, that's going to have a really different Venus signature. And it's something that we often overlook when we're looking at which sign and which house Venus is in. But it's actually really important. Does anyone know whether they have a morning or evening star Venus? I mean, this is how you do it. Imagine that you're standing right in the middle of your chart. Look at where Venus is and look at where the sun is. And if the sun is on the right of your sun, if Venus is on the right of your sun, it's a morning star. And if it's on the left, it's an evening star. And yeah, super easy to tell. And Venus is never going to be very far from your sun because of the orbit of Venus. So it'll only be a couple of signs away from your sun at maximum. So yeah. So Lauren has a 6th house Venus in Aries. I have an Aries Venus too. Robin has Venus in Leo. Gorgeous. 3rd, 4th house. Cool. Wait, so Venus is on the right of your sun, so it's a morning star. And Robin's is left, so it's an evening star. Now I'm like, no, Lauren, yours will be on the left, won't it? If you stand in the middle of your chart, you have to be standing in the, not just looking at your chart, stand in the middle. So you have a Pisces sun on the right, and then Venus will be on the left of it in Aries. Yeah. So we all have evening star Venuses. Sharon, I don't know if you're listening or able to type, but yeah. Yeah, so we all have evening star Venuses. Cool. So I was going to read a couple of poems about Inanna. Let's do that because I feel like I love this. We're all like, which one's left and which one's right? Yeah, it's one of those things where like if you're just looking at your chart, it gets really disorienting. You have to imagine yourself standing right in the middle and then look at your sun and Venus from there. So yeah, for those of us with Venus at the bottom of our chart, it's like backwards. Yeah. So Lauren's an evening star and Robin's a morning star. So there's these gorgeous poems about Inanna that I think really illustrate this beautifully, the difference between the Lady of the Morning and the Lady of the Evening. So this is the Lady of the Morning. Honored counselor, ornament of heaven, joy of Anne, when sweet sleep has ended in the bedchamber, you appear like bright daylight. When all the lands and the people of summer assemble, those sleeping on the roofs, those sleeping by the walls, when they sing your praises, bringing their concerns to you, you study their words. You render cruel judgment against the evildoer. You destroy the wicked. You look with kindly eyes on the straightforward. You give that one your blessing. And this describes this like really goddess of judgment, a warrior goddess. And so if you have a morning star Venus, you're probably, oh, I think I have a slide for this actually. If you have a morning star Venus, you have this warrior goddess energy within your Venus. A capacity for activism. It's easier to express your anger and your passion. You're probably much more straightforward in your communication. You fight for what you believe in, fearless in the face of danger. You have a physical connection in love and you're more realistic. And this also obviously needs to be in, you need to put this in the pile with everything else. So look at your Venus in its sign, in its house, and as a morning or evening star. And then we're going to go deeper in a minute as well. And so as an evening star, I have this Lady of the Evening poem. At the end of the day, the radiant star, the great light that fills the sky, the Lady of the Evening appears in the heavens. People of all the lands lift their eyes to her. The men purify themselves. The women cleanse themselves. The ox in his yoke lows to her. The sheep stir up the dust of their fold, and all the living creatures of the steep, the four-footed creatures of the high steep, the lush gardens and orchards, the green reeds and trees, the fish of the deep, the birds of the heaven, my lady makes them all hurry to their sleeping places. The living creatures and the numerous people of summer kneel before her. Those chosen by the old woman prepare great platters of food and drinks for her. The lady refreshes herself in the land. There is great joy in summer. The young man makes love with his beloved. And so here we see a love goddess who is like compassionate and taking care of all of the animals and all of the family. And she's comfortable in relationships. She's seeking harmony. She may be in denial that anger or disharmony even exist. She has divine connection and is idealistic. And my chart is really similar to Lauren's. So we have an Aries Venus that's also an evening star. And I think it can be really, that those almost feel like opposites, because Aries is ruled by Mars and it feels like quite an aggressive, assertive Venus placement. But when it's an evening star, it has a softness to it as well. And so there's almost these two conflicting Venus archetypes that are within us. If you have any questions or you want to share anything, do feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt. I'm here for that. Does anyone want to share anything before we jump into Venus cycles and what they look like?
Hey Gemma, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because never sure these things work. No, yeah, just to say, when you were sharing the story, I got shivers when you said, "Oh, that it's like linked to facing your shadow self." Like, really feel that. And yeah, I got a bit confused looking at my chart, but yeah, so I evening star, and yeah, definitely like the whole seeking harmony thing. Like I avoid conflict, like just avoid it because always want things to be in harmony, but then it's almost like burying your head in the sand sometimes. But yeah, definitely relate to that.
Yeah. Robin, were you going to say something as well?
Hi, Gemma, Lauren. I'm so thoroughly enjoying this. I'm so sad I have to go early. But yeah, Lauren, I'm the exact opposite, and I feel so conflicted because, like, it's true, I do have like no problem like expressing my passion or if I'm upset or angry about something. But then I have Taurus rising and then Venus in my fourth, so it feels like so like the other polarity of that where I do want to keep the harmony and I do want to like seek the beauty and like not go into the conflict. So I feel so torn sometimes as well. But this is so interesting. And I've heard the Inanna story before, but I loved listening to you say it with the images you had and everything was just so beautiful. Um and I went and I looked because I feel like my descent, my like I feel like we all have an Inanna story, right? And mine was in 2018 in the beginning. And I went and looked where Venus was then, and it was in Scorpio. And I'm like, of course, in my seventh house, which is exactly what it was all about. And yeah, so very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that we all go on that Inanna journey over and over throughout our lives as well, don't we? Just getting those different levels and in different areas of our lives. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about what Venus cycles look like and then how and then we'll fit it all together because it's all in pieces at the moment. But the Inanna story really does fit in with how the Venus cycle works. So when Venus orbits the Earth, I'm going to try to explain this, but it's a lot. So feel free to ask me questions or let me know if something doesn't fully make sense. So when Venus meets the sun, there are two ways that Venus meets the sun. If you imagine a solar system, when we look at Venus, we're looking at Venus orbiting around the sun. And so we will see her line up with the sun when she's closest to us and then when she's furthest away. And we call this the inferior conjunction when she's closest and a superior conjunction when she's furthest away. And this is a picture of what that looks like over many, many, many years. So here we imagine the sun is here. This is where Venus is. Oh, it's easier on this one. Look. So the sun will be in here somewhere. Venus is here. This is where she's closest to the Earth. And when we have these inferior conjunctions, that's when Venus is retrograde. So every time that Venus goes retrograde, we know that she is closest to us. This is the same for Mercury as well, because obviously we're viewing them from a similar perspective. And so this is the retrograde point in her cycle, and this is the beginning of the cycle. So the current cycle we're in, this began when Venus was in Capricorn in January. And then we see her go all the way around, and then she'll meet the sun again here. And this is where we are now. This is the underworld point in Venus's cycle, where we see Venus meeting the sun, but behind the sun in Libra. And so I feel like I had a better slide for this. Wait, let me close this. I'm going to find my better slide. I should have planned this slightly better. Oh no, I can't find it now. There it is. Sorry about this. Share screen. That's the one I'm looking for. Hey, this is a diagram that I made that describes it a little bit better. So this is where Venus is now. This is that underworld phase. So, and then this is where Venus was in January. And we've been through this whole morning star journey with her. And now here, tomorrow, Venus will be exactly conjunct the sun. So exactly behind the sun in her underworld phase. And how this relates to the story of Inanna is if we look at the Venus retrograde piece of her cycle being when she hears the call of a Rishka girl, she then decides to move to go through her journey to the underworld. And at this point, she's not visible because she's too close to the sun. We only ever see Venus for a little while in the morning or a little while in the evening. She won't ever be visible in the middle of the night. So when she becomes visible over the horizon, she'll make 7 or 8 conjunctions with the moon through that cycle. And each of these is called a Venus gate. And they correlate to the gates which Inanna moves through in her journey. And then she'll drop below the horizon again when she gets too close to the sun. So it's around about 10 degrees away from the sun that she stops being visible. And that's going to depend on where you are in the world and what your horizon even looks like. But it's going to be around about 10 degrees that she is no longer visible because she's too close to the sun. And then in this underworld phase, which is a bit longer this time round, I think she's going to emerge around the end of November. I feel like it's the 24th. She's about 10 degrees away. and then she will be and we'll pass through these 7 gates of Ascent again before we come to her next Venus star point in Leo in August next year. Okay, I'm gonna hitch back through my slides, find where I was again. Here. Okay, so before the recording stopped, it is recording again, isn't it? It says it's recording. I can't hear anything. I think my sound has died, so I can't hear anyone, but never mind. We are, I was just going to talk about the current Venus pentagram that we're working with. So I'm sorry this doesn't line up super duper well. It was the best I could do with the graphics on Canva, but we are obviously at this Libra pentagram point here. And so this will be on a different star to the Capricorn one that we had. I think I've listed them like in the order that they happen, but some of them, oh no, they're all evening star ones. So, so as Venus moves from the next evening star pentagram point, that's what I'm saying. The next evening star pentagram point is going to be in Gemini, and the Leo one is going to be a morning star point. Does that make sense? So this is a superior conjunction, and this is going to be an inferior conjunction in the Venus cycle. And yeah, so these are the star points that we're working with at the moment. And I really want to talk about why it's important that this star point is in Libra. This is the first time we've had a Venus star point in Libra in a really long time, like since the 1800s. And it was in Scorpio, but these move about a degree-ish every time they come back around, which is every 8 years. So every 8 years, each star point is moving 1 degree. So slowly it's moving through the signs. We see the star twisting. And we have had star points in Aries, Scorpio, and Capricorn up until this point. The 2 signs ruled by Mars, and the sign of Mars is exaltation, and nothing that is particularly useful to Venus. And now, as this star point moves into Libra, we see a Venus-ruled star point. So we're seeing a much more Venusian energy, and then as this Aries star point moves, that's going to move into Pisces. Not until like 2040, but we're definitely seeing this transition into a much more Venusian time, a much more Venusian star, as those 2 Mars-ruled points are moving into Libra, that's ruled by Venus, and then Pisces, the sign of Venus's exaltation. So this is a really exciting time. And we're going to see this Libra star point go back into Scorpio for the next morning star point that we have. The next inferior conjunction before it fully moves into Libra. So in 4 years' time, we will have another Scorpio star point. But after that, that star point will have fully moved into Libra. And as they move from one sign to another, as so often happens in cycles in astrology, we see Scorpio trying to finish off the work that it's been doing. I feel like I'm in slides for this. Maybe not. But yeah, as we move out of that Scorpio start point, the kind of work that Venus in Scorpio is here to do is going to be coming, probably not to an end, but like there's a work that needs to be completed for that transit. And so the real, like the depth, Robin wrote the most gorgeous love letter to Scorpio, which I think probably really digs into this so much better than I ever could. But really that deep connection that we see with Venus and Scorpio, that's like got a fearlessness to like really delve into deep emotional spaces. And things like the way that we've embraced therapy in our culture is probably very linked to that Scorpio star point as well. You can look up your own Venus star point at sophiavenus.com. I should have prepared a link to drop in the chat for you, but I haven't. But basically, there's shall I look it up now? Let me open it, and then I can drop a link in the chat. We have time for this. Does anyone know what their Venus star point is? She I can't remember her name. I have her book right here. Ariel Gutman has trademarked the word Venus star point, and so you can't talk about them without promoting her book, which is also awesome. So yeah, if you're really interested in this stuff, you should definitely check that out. But I'm going to find this list in a minute. Where is it? Here. I'll drop this link in the chat. If you want to look yours up, or, you know, drop your birthday in the chat and we can look it up together. I don't know if you're able to at the moment, Lauren, if you're out walking. So this is basically what she has created. And if you look up the date that comes before your date of birth, that's the one that you're looking for. So, yeah. So for me, I was born in March 1985. So the one before me is this one in June 1984, because April was just after my birthday. And so my Venus star point, or Venus Pentagram Point, is in Gemini. Does anyone know when theirs is? What year were you born, Lauren? 83. So August is after you. So yours would be in Scorpio. Scorpio, which means that this is actually your star point. Because this is the transition that, like, the Scorpio star point has now moved into Libra. So this is a Venus return year for you. When we see Venus come back to our star point every 8 years, this is our Venus return. Oh, wait a minute. Yours was a direct one. Yeah, that's the same as this one. So yeah, this is your Venus return. How about you, Robin? Could you find yours?
Yeah, I think it's Capricorn retrograde, because I'm August
Oh, I can't
1990.
hear you. I don't know what's going on with my sound.
Let me mute.
I'm really sorry. You drop it in the chat.
Can you hear me? Sure. Capricorn.
Is that working? Can you say something, Robin?
Yeah, hello.
No, I still can't hear anything.
Oh, okay, I wrote it in the chat.
Yeah. Tech issues. I'm not usually this bad with tech issues. I need to stop the share now because I can't actually see my super professional. Yeah. I'm going to present my thing again, like narrating to myself. Sorry. The yours is in Capricorn, Robin. So you just had yours then in the Capricorn one earlier this year, because that was a Capricorn retrograde one in January. Venus cycles coming back around. Okay, I'm not actually sharing the screen. Here, let's share the screen. So I think this is just what I said. Yeah. So the last Venus ruled Venus Pentagram Point was in 1933, and that one was ruled by Taurus. And yeah, the one in 2026, 4 years, is going to be in Scorpio before we're fully into this Libra space. I love that you've both got your Venus return years. That's really cool. It's like almost like you were fated to be here. We are definitely entering more ovulation times. That's literally what I was talking about. Yeah, in the last Libra pentagram point, did I say when it was? I wanted to say 1833, but that sounds like that was the Taurus. Definitely in the 1800s, we saw lots of Libra pentagram point people were great composers and artists, and it was a time of great art and literature. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of this time with Venus, with our pentagram point moving into Libra over the next like 100, I think it's 150 years in each sign-ish. So yeah, here is the chart of this Venus pentagram point. So we can see here, I've like listed all the aspects. And we can see that it's at like 29 degrees of Libra, which is obviously quite an important time. We're moving, similar to the nose, we're moving backwards through the signs because of the way the star spins. And so starting at 29 degrees, but also 29 degrees is a degree of completion and mastery. And so we have those two different stories running next to each other, that we're starting this Libra story with a degree of mastery and deep knowing. And Venus and the Sun are conjunct, obviously, they're trine Mars. And so we see that really creative and relationship focused aspect there as well, a collaboration between Venus and Mars, which is always such a fun aspect to have. They work so beautifully together as our lovers of the sky. And then we have that square to Pluto, which obviously adds that intensity. I don't know if anyone else has been feeling that from the last week, but this Pluto square Venus has been super intense. And yeah, it just brings this great potential for transformation and for moving into depth with fearlessness. Like there's a deep power in Pluto aspects, I think. The moon is in Virgo as well, but trining Pluto. So we're really seeing Pluto make lots of aspects to feminine parts of our chart, and that can feel really vulnerable. So we see that coming through as well. The moon is opposite Neptune. It's much easier reading a chart when you're not also reading a list of aspects, right? Like putting together pieces of a story in my brain. When I look at this chart, the things that really stand out to me are these aspects to Venus of Pluto and Mars, and this story here, even with the quincunx between Mars and Pluto, of like collaboration with Mars and then tension with Pluto, and how those pieces all play together. It feels really relationship focused, obviously, because it's Libra, but this Venus-Mars piece as well, in a much deeper way, has a story of relationships between masculine and feminine, and how we work with both of those polarizing elements within ourselves and within our relationships with others. Does anyone want to take a break? We can take a break if you want. I feel like I'm whistling through this stuff. I thought this would take longer. Should we unpack some Venus gates? Or Robin, you're going to have to leave in a sec. Sorry. I wish I could hear you. This would be so much more fun if I could hear you. Never mind. So these are the gates of descent in Venus's journey that we have already been through, starting from that Capricorn Pentagram Point that we had in January. So we had this crown chakra gate that we went through, which was while Venus was still in Capricorn. and that was very much about releasing divine authority. And then we moved to the second gate, which was still in Capricorn. It was like a really slow start after that retrograde, so lots of time in Capricorn. And if you remember back, there was like Venus met Pluto during that time as well. So it was a super intense time. And Mars as well. There was a Venus-Mars conjunction in Aquarius as well. So all of that story was going on alongside this. And then at the second gate, we removed those illusions from the third eye chakra. At the third gate, we were looking at our throat chakra, letting go of stories that limit us, but also like where we listen to other people's words, where we speak with other people's voices, and really thinking about that and letting go of what that means to us. Then we had the heart chakra gate in Pisces, where we were really thinking about that, like the universal lovingness of Pisces and how we're attached to everyone, and then our attachments to the people that are close to us, and just releasing control over all of that as we pass through that fourth gate. And then at the fifth gate of our solar plexus, looking at our willpower in Aries. So removing those feelings of superiority, the desire to get what we want at any cost, just letting go of those things. And then at the sixth gate in Gemini, the sacral chakra, we're surrendering our creativity. And at the seventh gate, our root chakra, releasing that attachment to security, and the things that we sometimes bind ourselves with, because we feel like they keep us safe, but actually they are binding us. And then the eighth gate was in Leo, and this is the gate of descent, the gate of humbling and bowing low. Tough one in Leo. And as we pass through that final gate, the gate of descent, Venus sunk below the horizon, so we could no longer see her. And then we found ourselves in the place that we are now. Where we are now is in this invisible phase, this invisible underworld phase, just as Venus is behind the sun. And this is the point of her death and her rebirth. So we see this story of transformation unfolding around these superior conjunctions, where we're seeing that story of death and rebirth and facing our shadow and embarking on that journey of integration and deepening our capacity for love through that. So this is the journey that we're heading into next. on the 24th of December, we're going to have our first Venus gate where Venus is visible. And we're going to be back in Capricorn, looking at our root chakra in relation to Capricorn, which just blend so perfectly, don't they? I feel like if Capricorn had a chakra, it's the root. Really looking at those themes of security and of how we reclaim our security, but in a way that is truly honoring to who we are as this reborn Inanna goddess. And then in January, we'll have our second Venus gate in Aquarius, where we'll look at the sacral chakra and Aquarius and how they relate to each other. These themes of creativity and Aquarius themes of community and maybe even technology and the future, and how that relates to the way that we are creative, that we share our creative potential. And then we have our solar plexus chakra and Pisces at the third gate. And so looking at how we think about those, like the universal kind of energy of Pisces and wanting to be one with everything, wanting to be in that spiritual realm, be beyond this world, be in a dream somewhere. And how do we draw power from that? How do we follow our autonomy, how do we assert our will on the world from this place of spiritual oneness? What does that look like? Then the fourth gate is in Taurus at the heart chakra. There's a gorgeous one, like really beautiful, grounded, Venus-ruled energy as we look at the heart chakra, and how we relate to the earth itself, how we relate to our security and our stability with our heart, and how we live a heart-led life with that gorgeous Taurus energy. And then the fifth gate is in Gemini, where we think about the throat chakra, reclaiming our voice through that Gemini energy of like communication. I feel like the throat chakra at Gemini are super well matched as well. It's so much about talking, so much about collaboration, but also about seeing things from different points of view, being able to have a plurality of story and what that looks like when we're telling our story, and embracing the idea that we are so many stories, and claiming that power of our voice again. And then the sixth gate in Cancer is our third eye chakra. So really settling into this this idea of seeing things beyond this world, whilst also being firmly rooted within our safe spaces, within our sacred spaces. I think Cancer is so much about creating this safe space, creating this home, really, and being able to see beyond from that space. And then in Leo, we have the crown chakra, looking at that divine connection. And then we meet the sun. We have another gate in Leo before we meet the sun. And as Venus is closest to the Earth, retrograde in Leo, we're going to have another Venus Pentagram Point and begin a whole new Venus cycle. I created a tarot spread. If anyone's interested, I will send that out with the replay, I guess, unless anyone particularly wants to take a moment to pull some cards now. And we can definitely, like, if you're in if you're in my Facebook group, or if you ever want to drop me a message or anything to just reflect on the cards that you've pulled or what's come up for you, then I am here for that. I have a feeling that I don't have loads more information to share, but do you mind if we take like 5 minutes, and I'm going to try and sort out my sound issues and come back and maybe we can reflect a little bit. I'm so sorry that I might miss you, Robin, if you have to leave. I'm going to pause the recording here.